Hi, my name is Mrs. Wilkins, or Sherrieyvette if you're new to the channel. And today I want to talk to you about the difference in between remote learning or virtual learning and homeschool, because they're two different things. And as the pandemic swept in, I would giggle and chuckle online and on social media when I would hear parents saying that they were homeschooling. And when I would talk to some of my parents of the students that I teach, they were also using the words homeschool and virtual learning interchangeably. And in my head, I was thinking, well, they're not the same. So I get it, because when the pandemic swept in, parents and guardians were thrust into, the high stakes learning environments and the pressures of schooling that teachers are faced with during their career, the 180 days times the length of their career. So I get it. It definitely felt like you're homeschooling. And you're probably thinking, well, how could she say it's not the same? Now, I've been a public school teacher for the past almost 15 years, and I've also had the pleasure of homeschooling my now 12-year-old. So I have a good insight into both worlds, so to speak. Okay, so I want to kind of point out in this video 5 clear differences in between remote learning or virtual learning that is provided by your local school district and homeschooling, because they are different. And I wanted to highlight that, especially since now some parents are actually considering true homeschooling for their learners. I do want to say this: whatever it is that you decide to do for your family, your learners, is okay, and just let it be okay. Don't compare what you decide to what someone else is doing. Let it be okay for your individual situation. And if you are a teacher and you decide not to return for in-person instruction, let that be okay. If you decide that you're cool with remote learning, let that be okay. All right? And the same thing for homeschooling. No two homeschooling programs for individual families looks the same. Okay? Now, when you homeschool, you, the parent or guardian, are the one who is responsible to make sure that your learners are hitting the learning targets by way of whatever resources, curriculum, or online school that you select for them. Now, with a remote or virtual learning option by your local public school district, that already comes planned for you. The curriculum is already provided. Unfortunately, you really don't get much of a say into the curriculum, or on what they're teaching or how it's delivered. But you also don't have to worry about if the curriculum is aligned to your state's learning standards, because most school districts are required to comply with when their learning standards are updated for their state. So they have to make sure that the curriculum is matching the core curriculum standards. So that's something that you don't have to worry about when you select remote or the virtual learning option. But as a homeschooling parent, you are the one who's responsible for making sure that your learner, actually hits those learning targets, Now, what I want to also point out is, in my state, in most states, homeschooling does not come with a highly qualified certified teacher. My daughter is in a unique situation because I am a trained teacher by profession. And this is not to say that you cannot homeschool if you aren't a teacher, because that's false. You can do it, okay? You don't need to be trained to be a teacher to homeschool. But I say this to say, if you homeschool, your local school district isn't required in most states to provide you any type of assistance. That is really your job. So when I heard parents saying they were homeschooling, I giggled, because my now 7th grader, some days when I'm homeschooling her, she's in middle school, I wish I had another teacher who could come in and teach her, or maybe just to provide her some outside experiences that I wouldn't be able to provide her inside of myself. So when someone says they're homeschooling, but they're really doing like remote learning or virtual learning by way of their school district, I'm like, it's different, because you don't really get that teacher who's supposed to be there to guide your child's remote or virtual learning experience. It's like, I wish I had a middle school teacher in my pocket right now. Third thing I want to point out is that most school districts come with a budget for their technology, So when remote learning came in, if your school district had a budget for technology and your learner was using technology at school, then in some cases, I know not all, in some cases for remote or virtual learning, your learners were sent home with their iPads or their Chromebooks or whatever devices they were used to using at school. And in many states, with the COVID relief funds, they're now using them to update the technology and to make sure that learners have it at home for their remote options. So this means, like in some cases and where I teach, if some families had 5 learners, then all 5 of those learners got their iPads at home to be able to participate in their remote learning experience with the school district. Now, for homeschooling, the technology is not free. I got to go to the Apple store this weekend to get my daughter a new device. In most states, there is no budget for materials that you need for homeschooling. Okay, that's a big difference. Homeschooling, you are responsible for acquiring those materials on your own. Now, in some states, not all, in some states, there are stipends or money that you could apply to use for materials to homeschool your child at home. But in New Jersey, that's not an option. It's all within myself. So Ailani, my 12-year-old, needs a new iPad or computer. We have to come out of our own personal budgets for that iPad or computer. Whereas if she were in, the district where I teach or our local school district, then she would get an iPad or a Chromebook, whatever device they use to work with at home for her virtual or remote learning experience. With homeschooling, it's just not the case. We have to pay for it. So number 4, with remote learning or homeschooling, the socialization is just different. I asked my 12-year-old, I sent her a text message. I said, what's the main difference in between remote or virtual learning and homeschooling? And she was like, you don't have anybody else to talk to. Period. Period. Because in our house, she is the only school age child. Like, our baby is 9 months old. She can't participate in the learning experiences that she engages in with me during homeschool. So a big difference in between remote or virtual learning and homeschooling in some cases, and in ours, is the socialization and the interaction is just much different. My child, like I said, is school age. When she logs into her virtual classrooms that I have set up for her, she's the only student in that classroom. Not to say that if you homeschool your child that you cannot provide them opportunities for socialization. That's not true. And I make sure at every turn that I'm doing that. But on this video, I'm just pointing out to you the distinct differences that I notice as a homeschooling mama and a public school teacher. So with remote learning, when your school year rolls out, the good news is that your learner is going to have a cohort of peers to be able to engage with in some cases in their virtual classrooms and on their online platforms that the teacher uses for interaction. So that's a plus. They'll have a cohort of different learners with different abilities and personalities to be able to interact with and look forward to seeing, whether it's on screen or in person, sometimes on a regular basis. So that's one distinct difference in between homeschooling and, the schooling offered by your local public school or remote learning or virtual learning. With remote learning, your child will be able to work with that different cohort of students and peers and to be able to collaborate on different learning experiences together with that cohort of peers that comes from enrolling in a public school session. Most times, most homeschooling parents like myself, we have to seek out that community of learners that are in the same age group of our particular child or learner. And it can be done, but it's just a difference that I want to point out, and that Ailani was thought that I should point out to parents and kids as well who might come across this video. Number 5 is a big one. Now, all of your resources, your report cards, your testing measures, your data for tracking the learner's growth with remote learning or virtual experience from your local school district, that's all packaged for you and all set. Now, when you decide to homeschool, you have to actually figure that out on your own. I do understand in some states, you're not required to track your learners' growth, do report cards, do any testing. And in fact, in my state, New Jersey, we're not required to do that. But as a professional, I do recommend that if you decide to go with homeschooling, you have some sort of system to be able to track your learners' growth. I just think it's for your own benefit, for you to feel good about yourself when your learner does hit certain standards that you have set, or maybe you're using the one set by your state. It feels good to know that, oh, I did that. We did that at home. It feels good to be able to track that growth. And also, like my daughter, she wants to re-enter the public school setting at some point in her school career, most likely high school. So I want to be able to have that proof, and when it's time for her to re-enter, to say, here's what we've been doing during our homeschooling experience. Here is where I see she is academically, and here's where I expect for you to place her in your setting academically. Don't try to put her in the, I'm not going to digress, but I'm going to say, for me and for my learner, I think it's important that I continue to do a report card progress and pay for and use different devices to measure her learning. For me personally, as a homeschooling mama, that's important for me. But I do understand in some states, you're not required to do that as a homeschooling parent. But please know that if you decide to go with homeschool, true homeschool, you are responsible for developing all of those systems. Whereas if you go with remote learning or virtual learning, all of your resources, tracking measures, report cards, testing devices, and testing programs you're not going to have to be concerned with that. As both a homeschooling mama and a public school teacher, I feel like I can go on and on and on and on and on about the differences in between remote learning or virtual learning and homeschool. Most importantly, I want to tell you and empower you not to be afraid to ask questions, to be able to utilize the power that your voice has. No matter what mode of education you choose for your family or your learners, know that your concerns are valid. Know that it's okay to feel overprotective of your children during this time. Know that it's okay to take everything that you said on Facebook, all of your concerns, and package them in a nice, respectful email and send them to your local school district or your local school. That is okay. Have your concerns be thought about in the planning process as we think about how we're going to begin to have our students return to both in-person instruction or remote or virtual learning. And if you are interested in more information about homeschool, please, when you're done watching this, check out the resources and information that are in the description box. And please know that I'm here to support you and help if you need it. I have a really quick survey on my website, bestofme.us or bestofme.us, that you can click and take, and just for some insight or for some additional support with your homeschooling journey, if that's what you decide to do. Right now, my 7th grader is the only person in our Google Classrooms. I am really excited about adding some more learners into that experience this coming fall. So if you're interested in and want to know about how you can get additional support with homeschooling or have me teach your child from the comfort of your home, send me an email. Check out the description box for the resources and information there. Now, if you found something that was useful, don't forget to share this video, click the like button, and there's a bell. Click that bell so you can get a notification for the next time that I share a video here on the channel. All right, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you.